the primary on our hands, which I have been saying is warrior favored, but most of the time when we've seen the matchup, it gets pretty close.
Well, let's jump into things. Already we're getting the interesting dilemmas that come with this warrior, because already, Gia, Parade Leader, Bumper Car, turn 1, turn 2, that is a strong curve. But is it what you are looking for specifically to do in this matchup? Is it too curve-oriented as opposed to finding the buffs?
I think it might not get there because, again, these are the minions that are within range of I-Beam, Chaos Strike Hero Power, Eldrazi Blade, Warblade's Hero Power. And I'm still unsure as to whether you are meant to just straight up keep Chaos Strike as the Demon Hunter in this matchup. We did play with that idea a lot last night in testing, but as the Warrior tends to realize that they're not necessarily always playing for curve, I wonder if the Demon Hunter then adapts. But as it happens, Glory did just keep the Parade Leader and get a bumper car back.
Yeah, and going for the coin on turn 1, again, against Demon Hunter, it is limited what they can do with it when you specifically coin it out. Obviously, once turn 3 rolls around, we're looking at Chaos Strike Hero Power, I-Beam Hero Power, even Immolation or a Hero Power if you really want to kill that thing at all costs. But right now, the curve is looking aggressive. The only problem, of course, is whether he'll be able to keep that up. And with Studies, Watley, and Stage Dive, yeah, I think this curve is just looking strong for Glory.
Oh, this is super unexpected from Shaxy. Chaos Strike to hit the Parade Leader means that he's committing to hero powering it again next turn, which I feel is just kind of taking more damage than necessary because next turn could have been Chaos Strike Hero Power. They're not going to play a taunt this early on.
This is interesting already. Like, I think it's Claw Machine that we see picked here. Oh, no way, I'm wrong. But I'm kind of surprised that we saw the Athletic Studies at all there, actually, from Glory, because a lot of the good ones are a little bit more expensive. Runthack, Claw Machine, I don't know, even Rakara, like you kind of want to bank the mana for. And so just playing the playing out the bumper car, I think is something I was a little bit more interested in on that turn.
Yeah, I agree. Glory maybe just looking for an absolute high roll option, but I think bumper car is pretty much the best you're going to hope for with only 1 mana remaining. In any case, Shaxy did get the Warblades off of the next draw, so the Chaos Strike initial bump did work out, at least for his mana expenditure. We could see just Lone Champion here.
Yeah, what, Lone Champion and Orc Merchant to... Or I guess Hero Power if you don't want to use that just to take out the 3/3.
Demons?
Yeah, it seems fine.
Imagine that's the plan.
The real problem here for Shaxy, though, is that this Illidari Studies, okay, don't play the Il'gynoth, is the really difficult part to use in this hand, because you can't just throw it out, hope to get Skull, and then play it from the left of your hand eventually. He kind of has to save it until exactly turn 6 and hope to hit exactly Skull for this hand to really start doing anything.
Agreed. I think if you're not going to play it on turn 2, which is a turn you would try to look for, say, Spectral Sight or settle for Crimson Sigil Runner, you would just hold it for turn 6. And that means Shaxy's next turn is probably going to be another removal with I-Beam or just, say, double jump for Spectral Sight.
And this is my real problem with Glory's play earlier on, because obviously he was not guaranteed to have found Overlord Runthack at this point and have it reduced down to 4 mana with the Athletic Studies. But there was a decent chance to have found it and made his play on this turn a little bit better, because now he's trading his, trading down to a 1/2 on the Warmaul Champion instead. And so it's, again, it's a somewhat lackluster turn, and it's another turn we have to wait before the buffs come in. And every turn you delay against Demon Hunter is the biggest importance, because their OTK is coming in very quickly.
Very true. I also was curious why he didn't, say, start with the 2/1 and then keep more health on the Warmaul, because this looks like a very fragile board. But it's worth noting that when you're not running Shield of Honor, the Warmaul Challenger is really not getting much done in the first place. So I'm not overly mad at it.
You're paying for my discretion.
Well, Shaxy should have conditioning on his mind here, but it's not like he can deny Glory getting 2 more 1/1s, because this 1/1 can trade into his Og Merchant next turn.
he should have Runthak on his mind, right? Playing this out here makes it an insane Runthak. Imagine if he hadn't played the Orc Merchant, hadn't added the Dark Moon Riders to the hand, there would be 2 less minions in hand and nothing to rush into in the first place. And look how absolutely bananas this is now.
Yep, it's gotta be Runthak here.
It's just
non-negotiable. It is too good. He gets 1 billion stats in hand. He will not be running out of value anytime soon because he has Watley for the full 3 because 1 bumper car was generated, was it? Oh no, sorry.
No, yeah, just drew them both. Like, I fully appreciate that this is not a good hand from Shaxy, but I think he just made it a little bit too easy for his opponent to do what Warrior wants to do in the matchup. Like, this is going into overdrive now. We're looking at 4/4 Dark Moon Riders slamming onto the board every turn, curving into a buffed up Troublemaker. This is really hard for Shaxy to deal with.
Yeah, and because the Runthak hit the board that turn, he had to delay what we were talking about, Illidar Studies on turn 6 to try and hit Skull. And yeah, I'm not really seeing Shaxy get past this one. Minion presence against Warriors, sometimes it can't be helped that you have to put something on board, like your Raging Fell Screamer, you want to bank the mana, but in that case, the 2-1 was literally not going to get Shaxy any chance of trading on board because Glory had at the very least 1/1s. Okay, that's a good draw. Don't think it's going to be enough necessarily. But in many other cases, it's just actively bad to put a minion on board because of not just Runthak, but Rakara too.
You say you don't think it's going to get there. It's actually looking kind of close, though. If you go philosophy on this turn, you have 3 0-mana Moargs. You are literally a draw away from lethal for the rest of the game then. You could literally go unoutcasted Skull to try and draw the the Fellscream Blast to just win the game.
True. He just didn't want to outcast the philosophy then?
Why not?
I mean, yeah, the health on the Moargs, they really don't matter at this point. It was just funny. But yes, you're right. Shaxy has outs, but he only has 1 turn to draw after this. Glory has so much damage into Troublemaker. So it is literally coming down to what's at the top of Shaxy's deck right now.
Although having said that, I believe now actually Fellscream Blast is, well, off the top it's lethal because of the Arcanist, but without the Arcanist it would only be 24 damage. So it does need a little bit extra. You can't just play Skull here and hope to get there.
Sorry, we were talking about perfect draws and it's Lone Champion and I can hear Sottle scoffing all the way from across the ocean. So now what he's looking to do is not find lethal if he's not starting with Skull. He is just going to look for a clear and outcast the Skull. He's playing all the Moargs to do that? This does not feel right to me. I don't know about this one, Chief.
Like, he's hoping to keep them on board, I guess?
But they die to any AoE you play if it's not exactly Fell Scream, like it's Immolation, and then...
And they have -1/-1 compared to what they could have had.
Okay. Well, he has infinite healing. This is Reno, and I guess he is going to keep the board.
I just don't even know what's happening this game. Like, I guess I didn't really have a better idea for Shaxy because he didn't actually have any draws for lethal with the Skull.
He didn't, but what he had was not outcast Skull and just look for Immolation, clear the board. You would be at 8, or if you hit the Fell Screen, you can heal a bit. But then you don't throw away the win condition because Glory's a rush deck. If he deals with everything... to be fair, though, he can't really deal with anything. Oh, wait, how big is the Samuro?
The Samurai, I mean, honestly, I don't think it got buffed, right? It was drawn afterwards. And it actually matters now as well. The fact that these are 2/4 and not 3/5 Moargs actually does make a big difference.
It does!
I guess the Samurai does kind of chop off the extra health anyway. But still, the principle is still here.
Yeah. Okay, well, Glory can deal with that every single Moarg because he had Samuro plus the Sword Eater. And now Shaxy's win condition is pretty much down the drain, as far as I can see.
Non-existent. Like, he has 1 Moarg left, but Okay, it's not non-existent, sorry, I will take that back. He has no philosophies left, only one Moarg, but he does have a Fellscream Blast, an I-Beam, Raging Fellscreamer to cheapen his Moarg, and an Arcanist in hand. He can still OTK his opponent. It's just going to be really, really tough.
I grow impatient.
He has full health, but it is deceptive how little time he has here. Like, this board is already representing 15 damage plus the weapon. So just playing Skull here probably cannot get away with that, and that has compounding implications because the Skull might be unable to be outcast next turn.
Yeah.
And Glory, by virtue of having the Ringmaster Watley played, Shaxy knows there's at the very least Alex this turn, or even worse, Troublemaker.
Yeah, and it's a buff Troublemaker. I think it's got like +3/+3 now. That's essentially impossible to deal with for the rest of the game. It's just going to keep pushing face.
Yeah.
And it's going to have to be the OTK for Shaxy to pull this one out of the bag.
And I don't think he'll have the time. Troublemaker is pushing 6 immediately, and then the next turn it is threatening 15.
21 in a way?
Oh, okay. That's 9.
Just
Very
not
far
enough,
away.
Yeah.
9 plus the weapon is just not getting there. And Shaxy knows there's Alex in hand, so
Does.
there's just no way he can deal with everything and keep the combo intact. The last cards in Shaxy's deck are these. I-Beam doesn't get there. Everything costs full because if he wants to outcast the Skull, he has to give up the Fellscream Blast.
Alas, poor warlock.
I'm simply not seeing an avenue to victory. I thought there would be an avenue to survive the turn, but it feels like even that is no longer available.
Yeah, it's just out of grasp. Like, Arcanist into Illidari studies maybe keeps you alive, but then your win condition is literally just deleted. You have to pray they don't have lethal, but I think you literally know they have lethal, 100%.
So is this 100 if he pushes...
15, yeah, it is. Right, you just send everything face with the weapon, and then you...
Yeah. Yep.
Very nice. I mean, you can even eke out extra damage by just bumping the Samuro into the Fellscreamer, and then you guarantee yourself at least 3 extra. But Glory does get over the finish line, as he lets us know his heart was pounding for the entire end portion of the game there. It really felt like Shaxy was going to be able to get the win there. And, I mean, he was right knocking on the door of it. He had a couple of draws of just getting the Fellscream Blast to win the game. The one really weird turn, obviously, was when he went with all the Moargs to outcast the Skull and hopefully find some way to stick them on the board after not buffing them up, obviously, and trying to go for the stick them on board game plan. It was very, very weird, and it did not, in this instance, manage to win him the game. Just overall, honestly, quite a bit that I disagreed with from Shaxy in that game.
I agree. And revisiting that very weird turn, I'm glad it will probably be the next turn in this highlight. Yeah, so Shaxy's mindset was clearly trying to stick the board here. If you hit the Fellscream Blast, I really don't know the likelihood on it. Maybe he was saying, if you don't have Samuro, I can stick at least 1 Moarg. I think that's a reasonable assumption to make. And if 1 Moarg had stuck, I am still not sure, however, if Shaxy could have immediately dealt lethal because he did use Fellscream, which was his best lifesteal option. So even looking at it from potentially sticking a Moarg angle, it felt very shaky. And I wonder if he just had that bad habit of just focusing on Skull being outcast and that only being the only good way to use Skull, which is very much not true. When the Skull itself costs 3, you can find a lot of spots where if you don't get the discount on what you draw, it's fine. And Shaxy could have taken a line where he would only use 1 or 2 Moargs to deal with the board.
Yeah, it's one of the ones where you have to go back. It's so difficult to retroactively think about Demon Hunter without being able to look at it in front of you, because it's such a deck that is very discreet in the things you can do and the damage that you can deal. The slightest of changes makes the biggest of effects later on. But with that out of the way, we are 1 game down, and now, of course, our players get to switch over to their secondary or tertiary decks should they so desire. And I believe that means that Glory has gone over to his tertiary deck here, which, taking a look at what that means for him, he takes out the Outrider's Axe and the Morshan Elite and sticks in 2 Ogremasters. Feels like a pretty good change to me.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. The Morshan Elites, I can see getting a little bit of very niche value against Demon Hunter that we discussed, where like if you position it with one big minion in the middle, sometimes maybe they don't get to swing face, but it's very, very hard to set something like that up. So I'm very much in favor of just getting the Ogremasters in there to make Shaxy's life a bit more difficult.
I mean, honestly, it kind of feels like Alutem was like, yeah, you want to run the Morshans, trust me, they're good. And then Glory just takes them out in both of his secondary and tertiary decks for literally anything else. He's like, yeah, please don't make me play this bad card.
Shaxy's hand is terrible for this early in the game. 0 card draw, all combo pieces and a weapon. And for Glory, we could see... There's a lot of ways to approach this, huh?
So, studies on one, you could look at that and then try to set up a Playmaker turn soon after. Obviously, Coin Crab Rider is very interesting because you can just go Stage Dive Studies on 2. That's like the obvious line, and probably the best.
Yeah, I was looking at this for sure, especially since the Crab Rider has that 4 health stat line that we talked about being so important. Problem is, once the minion is on the board, there's actually no way to buff it in this deck. There's no Shield of Honor. It's only Rakara, which obviously would not be available until 3 mana. So Shaxy is just going to bump this, and I don't know if it even warrants an I-Beam next turn. He probably just equips the Eldraki and calls it a day.
Oh, it's exactly Rakara though. Like, what if it's Rakara that comes down? You are so far behind then. Things just start going disastrously. I guess you have Arcanist I-Beam that is then opened up because you played the Warblade.
Yes, I definitely think that's the way to go. It's between Lone Champion and Eldraki Warblades for me. The thing is, if you I-Beam the 1-3 here, even if Rakara comes down on 1 minion, you're still in a very bad spot and you don't have the I-Beam. So I was definitely more interested in the Eldraki than the Lone Champion, just so we could get the I-Beam into the 1-cost position, like you were saying. But in the event where Glory has no way to buff anything, the Lone Champion actually gets some work done.
Yeah, it's pretty insane.
I never thought I'd see the day.
Actually, not an awful inclusion. At least not in this matchup. Obviously, we're looking at everything through the lens of specifically Rush Warrior, whereas it's a much more open field you have to prepare for.
Well, Glory has been dealing chip damage with these Wind Furies for some time now, but he really doesn't have the gas, you know, nothing to buff. Yes, he has an immediate weapon gain, but you really want minions that can continually deal damage, because Demon Hunter is going to heal up against the face-up burst that you get, which is finite from weapons.
This is a really tough turn, actually, because the Sword Eater is obviously decent on this turn. It protects your minion when there's a weapon on the other side, and it just is a body that gets in play. But Stage Dive into possibly draw a 2-drop into Studies afterwards to go like Playmaker, play your Rush, play the Bumper Car, play one of the 1-cost minions as well because of the mana you've banked. Like, there was some explosive possibilities that could have come down next turn.
You're saying playable minion. I'm thinking Stage Dive into Rakara closes out the game.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But it was certainly a risk because there are minions in this deck that wouldn't immediately be playable off of Stage Dive, such as the Overlord Runthak. So Glory instead takes the more consistent route of just getting the Sword Eater in play. Works out for Shaxy because he gets a good target for the Chaos Strike. But now Glory is going to open the box. And that is a whiff.
Yeah, that is a whiff.
Anchorman? He really needs card draw. I don't know how he's going to frenzy it, but maybe.
He'll find a way.
Ready for this.
And the Playmaker just... Oh, it feels so awful to play it in a position like this where you know that it probably just gets I-Beam for no value, but Glory has literally 2 attack on board if he plays the Warmaul Challenger. Not enough.
This hand, again, is just a disaster from Shaxy. Like, unless he can go double jump into Skull next turn, It's doing nothing! Like, what is this lone champion even accomplishing?
Oh, it's giving Glory a target!
Yeah.
For the... it's just actively bad again. I take it all back. Lone champion is terrible. The Anchorman now for Glory gets some draws here. And I was going to say, before this came down, even though it's a disaster hand for Shaxy, it's a very low pressure hand from Glory. So he had time to wait. But depending on what the Anchorman gets, that could change very quickly.
Hats off to this Crab Rider, though. It's done like 10 damage at this point, though. Just keeps smacking face over and over.
A little Murloc that could. Okay, this is big for Shaxy. Oh, wow, he goes double jump. Okay.
He's looking for Skull, right? Like, if you hit exactly Skull, it's insane. And there were no real bad outcomes. Like, if it's I-Beam, you just play it. Spectral Sight, you just play it.
Philosophy, though.
That's true. Yeah, if it was Philosophy.
I mean, if he whiffs on that, then it means that the Spectral Sight he drew naturally was not going to be outcast. That was my big concern. But I understand if Shaxy thinks he's in a spot where if he doesn't hit the Skull immediately, then it's just far too slow. I can respect that. So in the end, he gets the middling outcome. But now there's potential for the Skull to get in a bad position.
Oh, that's huge, right? It's playable now. That's all that matters.
And I think it gets sent on the Ogremancer. Maybe I'm being too optimistic, but because he's playing 2 spells here, he is just going to generate a lot of HP on the board that I feel he needs something like Immolation Aura to begin with to deal with this. And he does hit it. Maybe I'm just a high roller on Demon Hunter.
I don't know. I mean, I saw where you were coming from. If you hit Immolation Aura, you get a full clear on the board. Whereas now, well, I mean, you can... Oh, no, wait, you can't get there, right? Unless you want to go mega all-in with his Moargs, which I'm not a fan of.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking if you get Immolation Aura, 1 Moarg and Immolation, if the I-Beam had gone, then the Ogremancer can deal with everything. If you don't hit the Immolation, you're feeling very sad and probably just die immediately. So I get where Shaxy's coming from, but I often feel this Demon Hunter needs to take risks like that, and he's in a very awkward spot now because if he does play the single Immolation Aura, both the Ogremancer, a new 2/2, and the Crab Rider stay up on board. Oh, the Watley! It means Alex Straza available for next turn.
Yeah, that is the card that Glory is looking for. Like, he has a lot of pressure on board already. That's not really his concern. It's just making sure he has the follow-up there, and that is more than enough follow-up.
Can even comfortably fit in hero power. We're at a point where we discussed Warrior often doesn't have the resource, or sorry, the mana left over to both be able to shut out certain breakpoints from Demon Hunter and push lethal, but I think Glory's in a spot where he can absolutely do that. If he plays any more minions here, he's kind of just making the Ogremancer worse.
Very good positioning as well to put it between the 2.
Wait, is that lethal? He got the Fell Scream! Oh my god, I think Shaxy has it. These Moargs are just, it's infinite. It's just too much.
Right, well, that one on the left doesn't actually cost 0, right? Because it was the... Yeah, it's still just lethal, though. Yeah. It's still Omega lethal.
Yeah.
Oh my god, it's like...
not even gonna bother. Okay, Shaxy got the draw. Well done.
72, okay. I think he's dead at this point, and that is game 2 going to Shaxy. We're going all the way to game 3. Again, it is a best of 3 format here between our 2 players. And this is kind of pretty emblematic of how our practice testing went. A lot of the time as Warrior, you feel really good, you're putting pressure on the board, and then all of a sudden you're just dead. And there was nothing you could do about it. I think that Glory did, for the most part, as good of a job as possible of trying to put maximum pressure on the board. There was 1 or 2 turns where he could have obviously put more damage on the board, but it would have come at the cost of leaving his minions less well defended. So there's always a trade-off here. And I think the lines he went for the most part, were perfectly reasonable.
I agree. For Shaxy there, maybe I went a little bit too hard on him not using the I-Beam on the Ogremancer, because looking at the hand again towards the end, he was actually just missing 1 combo piece for lethal. I think even if it were I-Beam, it would get there, given the amount of Moargs he had. So he could have just been saying, I want to remove as much immediate damage on the board as possible, guaranteed, which is just I-beam on the 4-3. Again, I probably would have played it a bit different, but it's just so difficult to evaluate OTK Demon Hunter in retrospect because the outcomes of how your deck is arranged and secondly, what your skull discounts has such an immeasurable impact on the game itself.
Yeah, nicely done there as well. It means heading into Game 3, obviously we are expecting the same list from Glory with the Ogremancers slotted in there, which in this instance, you know, we're a little bit too late to really get the job done. They seem, you know, the more I see it, good against Demon Hunter, but they're not the silver bullet that just locks out the game like Alusha can or something like that. It's very easy with the Immolation Auras to clear off all the skeletons, then clear off the rest. But it's a nice way to at least make it a little bit more difficult for the Demon Hunter to consistently clear your board. But I wonder if we'll see a change up in strategy from Glory, because in both games so far, we have seen what Coin Parade Leader and Coin Crab Rider, which, given the way his hand was looking, I do think was the correct way to go. But it's not always the way that we were playing this matchup, where instead of just trying to go all in on tempo, you try and find these higher buff hands, these higher value hands, because while those Crab Riders, he got 2 of them right at the start of the game, they weren't game-winning on their own. They attacked face 1,000,000 times, and his opponent was still only at like 20 health.
They really need Rakara to pair with them, if not the early conditioning. But this keep from Glory of the Watley, I'm glad somebody did that because we were asking these questions last night. Is Watley just a keep in this matchup? Because it gives you so much gas, and Demon Hunter can often easily deal with your first couple waves of threats with the Immolation Aura / I-Beam. So I like the keep from Glory, and what he has different now here that's a big deal is the Rakara. He has a way to buff minions that are already on the board, so even just this innocuous looking bumper car could become a threat.
Yeah, just going as cheap as possible there. You can rush out some of the non-rush minions that you're going to draw, like the Sword Eater, the Watley itself. I think it's fine.
Shaxy's keep was a bit interesting too. I think just going for the guaranteed Spectral Sight in Outcast position because he kept Thalnos on the left, which is a card you're pretty fine with dumping. Illidari Studies is a card that I keep wondering whether it's supposed to be a keep in this matchup. Sottle said it was matchup dependent, and oftentimes it's felt not necessarily that good here. Oh my gosh, this top deck is huge. Chaos Strike.
Oh, I thought you meant the lone champion, the true top deck, that would not be that good here, actually, in fact.
Wait. Huh?
Doesn't want to clear it.
What? No way!
Interesting.
What? Wait, he hit... Oh my god, this has to be wrong. There's no way Shaxy meant to do that. I think he just miscounted his mana.
I mean, it's hella risky. Like, he can clear it with Arcanist and Fell Screen Blast next turn if that's his plan. Like, he has Spectral Sight, Arcanist, Fell Screen Blast, then he can go Lone Champion, then Skull, but yeah.
The only benefit he got was casting an Illidari Studies without already having a Skull in hand, which is like, what do you even want to bank the mana for? I don't know. Thankfully for Shaxy, he has the clear. But that felt very fishy.
Yeah, agreed. The follow-up, though, is slow but powerful here for Glory. He's got Coin Watley into conditioning, which obviously sets up for huge amounts of value in the coming turns. But is it going to be able to get there quickly enough is the eternal question against Demon Hunter.
It is so hard to say. Shaxy has the double skulls. He has the lone champion this turn, which is not necessarily alone. Okay, he can trade down to get the Divine Shield. And after this, Glory is on a clock.
Preemptively using the Philosophy. Yeah, I'm fine with that in this situation. Your mana is spoken for a good long while.
I agree. These conditionings are... It's still a bit awkward, right? Because the 1/1s get up to 3/3, where you would really like a 4-attack minion to deal with the lone champion. Probably still just take the clear, though. Also, the ETC gives you some incentive for holding on, perhaps, to some of these minions. After having seen a lone champion, though, it's unlikely that Shaxy actually gets on board in a significant way. So the ETC is very likely not going to be paired with other minions that come down that same turn, but instead you stick some minions and then you ETC the next turn as they can naturally attack face.
Right, exactly, which is kind of why I'm thinking, I mean, just quite simply bumper car plus the Dark Moon Rider will allow you to clear off the minion and set up for the ETC next turn. He's just... I mean, it is a 3-6. It's difficult to deal with, and even if they don't play much, you can still just attack face with the few rush minions that you do have surviving.
Fair play. This is also going into what Shaxy wants to be a skull turn.
True.
So you tend to think, I better load up on board where they have the... I mean, barring perfect discounts, the least mana to work with to actually deal with the ETC. So this could work big time for Glory. It's a risk, but we shall see. Is it going to deter Shaxy from playing a skull?
Oh, I think you still got a skull, right? You can just
Me
bump
too.
your bump into the rush on the other side, and then they're only going to get maximum 1 minion's extra ETC value. Like, obviously, ETC can attack for 3 itself, but that is not winning the game.
I agree.
Demons.
If he wants to clear everything, it means more immolation, and then you just float 2 mana at the end of it. It just feels so awkward. So Shaxy not going to take the bait. Whew.
Oi, oi, oi.
Giga cycle.
Yeah, I like playing that. I don't think that the fear of locking your other skull in is really a concern at this point. Like, it's locked.
Yeah, and it's 3 mana. You're happy to play it,
Yeah.
even if it's not an outcast position, most of the time.
It's true.
Then he can play Eldraki to not overdraw, then just bump his guy into the 3-1. Really? All face?
Ooh.
Wow. Shaxy is brave, man. This is an ETC on board, so that's minimum, like, 2 minions more that can go in and get the ETC damage.
Yeah, I'd say it's closer to like 2 maximum rather than 2 minimum. Right?
Sorry,
'Cause they're all
yeah, you're...
buffed up. But yes, you're not wrong. It does mean he's going to tank a bit more damage. Obviously, it comes at the benefit of dealing more to his opponent. And honestly, I kind of feel like that's a good trade-off. You need to play very, very risky with this Demon Hunter and put yourself in a position where, again, at 24, this is the break point for Demon Hunter, where they can start to deal cheesy lethals.
Very true. Shaxy is just missing Il'gynoth now, and he has tons of damage. I guess still needs to find a turn to get the Fell Scream down as well to bank the mana. For now, Glory can go Playmaker with Bumper Car if he likes. I guess he would overdraw after that, so maybe not the Bumper Car, but we could see just the 1-1. Or maybe not even the Playmaker altogether because you float mana after that. So we are going to see Glory just try to get the most immediate damage as well with his weapon. Not face tanking as well. Breakpoints could be relevant. He could still push the button to get above 24 at some point.
Oh, it's going to be so close. This board is threatening. The follow-up is huge from Glory as well. Even next turn with Playmaker, Bumper Car, you get threats on board.
However, Shaxy does have Immolation Aura with a lot of spell damage. The problem is, it's the weird shape of spell damage. Usually, if you have Immolation Aura and Talented Arcanist, you're very happy. You just play those two together. It's 6 damage AoE. End of story. This one gets weird because if you play Moarg Immolation Aura, that's 4 damage AoE. But if you pair it with the spell damage, it only goes up to... Do you even gain much? Because the Moarg dies right away off the first one.
So you could go Fell Screamer to clear out the card from the left-hand side, then Moarg, then Ethereal your Raging Fell Screamer at that point. So at least then your Moarg survives to get another double hit, and then that would allow you to clear off the board, right? You lose the discount from the Raging Fell Screamer on the Moarg, but I think that's okay given that you can outcast another skull to get the reduction that way.
Right, I think that's a really good spot. It deals 6, and then the last hit on the Sword Eater, you would just swing into. Yeah, good spot. It's exactly the play Shaxy goes for.
Yeah, it's just very, very clean.
Oh, sorry, deals 5.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's okay. It's still a good turn, right? I think it's the best you're going to get while still leaving your win conditions somewhat intact.
I agree. But that does mean Glory sticks ETC. Obviously, it's the other way around that you'd rather have it. You stick any minion and then you play ETC. But the 3 damage by itself is very threatening because Glory has Alex in 2 turns, Troublemaker next turn. So he just has to get over this hump.
I mean, it has to be Playmaker plus Samurai, right? Samurai has +4, +3, I think, at this point. Like, it's beefed up big time.
I agree. Bumper Car past its usage at this point. Because ETC is very likely dead next turn, so even if you do get a bunch of 1/1s in hand, they have very little utility. However, Glory could be thinking about trying to fit in the hero power as well, because like we said, 24 is a relevant breakpoint, especially having seen the Eldrazi that played. There's so many things to consider!
That's very true.
Oh, Glory doesn't feel like he's got a chance, but he's very much still in this, and it's once again dependent on what comes off the skull.
Alas, poor warlock.
Oh, that's
That's
huge.
big. Whoa.
Now, Shaxy just needs to stay above 6 if he can clear the entire board, because Troublemaker very likely. But how does he clear? Oh, okay, now he can.
Well, he needs to heal up as well here, though, right? Because there's the weapon that's coming online as well, in addition to the Troublemaker. So it's 9 he needs to get above here.
True. And because he couldn't commit the Morg to this turn, then the Playmaker sticks around, and okay, he's gonna go Og Merchant. That's big.
This is absolutely correct. It's not like you're playing around some out there niche lethal. This is one of the cards you expect to come down here, and this keeps him alive for 1 extra turn.
Big deal. Shaxy doesn't have lethal guaranteed next turn because he had to use combo pieces like that, but that was absolutely the play to stay alive, I think.
Oh, it's got to be so likely though, right? You can even play another skull on this turn.
Yeah, I think Shaxy sees the lines. He needs to hit the other Fell Scream Blast, and a Talented Arcanist here, or a Moarg, I believe. Is I-Beam in? Oh, okay.
That's it.
Yeah.
That is it. You can copy 0 mana Moarg. Easily lethal at this point.
So the I-Beam goes up to 5 damage, and then you double it 3 times. That's 40. So now we just account for mana. The I-Beam will cost 1, given the way things work, but it still fits.
Yep.
It still fits. He has 1 mana extra even.
A really, really close one there as Shaxy checks, double checks, get everything down. I-Beam, triple, and you're there. Unlucky for Glory. That was a brutal way for him to go out. But again, it just shows how close this matchup is between the Demon Hunter and the Warrior. On one side, we've seen it for Alan today go the Warrior's way, but even then, we could argue with better play from Chonsu. Maybe that would have gone the Demon Hunter's way as well as Shaxy. I've got to admit, in the second half there, it really felt like he did tighten up his play and get much more in the zone.
I mean, I still have questions about the Chaos Strike on turn 3, like not immediately getting rid of a Rakara. Maybe if you want to be very generous, it seemed like Shaxy knew that it was just going to be a Fell Scream turn the next turn.
Yeah.
Skeptical. But when it came to macro, my goodness, did Shaxy spot the lines. The clear with what you said this exact turn, having to put the spell damage on the Fell Scream so that the Morg wouldn't immediately die was pretty much the only way to play that turn without immediately dying to Glory's follow-up. And then on the very next turn, he had to spot this other clear using the Ethereal Og Merchant at the very end, which had doubling effects of him not having to face tank the 4 attack and also putting a potential bumper in the way of the Troublemakers. Very well done.
Actually didn't matter though which minion he put it on, right? Because it was 2 damage that was doubled up to 4, so everything died immediately either way. Like, I don't think it mattered either way in the end, because he still